can sexual violence be countered in places where there are no whistleblowers? International Justice Mission Canada, or IJM, works to strengthen justice systems to protect the poor from violence, including victims of sexual violence and sex trafficking. IJM's Executive Director, Ed Wilson, is with us, and Kelly Cameron, the Student Mobilization Coordinator for IJM. Please let us welcome them to Context at this time. Thank you. Thank you. Ed, I want to start with you. What are you seeing in the study and in your experiences with sexual violence on a global level?
What we see on a global level, it's a worldwide issue. It's very pervasive. It's present in every society where we conduct operations. What we see, again, is that it's not predominantly an issue involving organized crime, but it's low-level, everyday criminals who use their power over those who are weaker to extract something for their benefit, which oftentimes is personal profit, personal gain, personal satisfaction.
And looking at the work of IJM for both yourself, Kelly, and Ed, you draw links, direct links to the way to stop sexual violence is a direct link between, hey, we got to beef up, we got to very much improve law enforcement and justice systems as a way to stop violence, sexual violence. In what way, what specifically does that look like?
Well, I think in most communities, there are typically 4 levels of protection. The first level is the family. The second level are other community members. The third level would be private security agencies. And the fourth level is public law enforcement. I think of a situation with a young girl named Yulisa, a 5-year-old girl from Bolivia. Yulisa was raped by her uncle and left for dead by the uncle. A community member found Yulisa, returned her to her parents. The mother reached out for help, but law enforcement wasn't available to help. So she reached out to IJM. We got involved, began to represent the concerns of the family, connected them with the public prosecutor, and ensured that justice was done in Yulisa's case. So we see the need for the strengthening of public law enforcement agencies so they fill the gap in the communities where we conduct our operations that they fill in our own cities.
I want to come back to that point. Kelly, you have worked with IJM in Cambodia, yes, with those who have suffered sexual injustice. Give us that kind of, what has your experience been on the ground? What kind of stories have you heard shared with them? What are you seeing as it relates to this?
Right. I think it's really interesting because IJM has been on the ground in Cambodia for just over 10 years now. And when we started, children were being sold for sex with impunity. Basically, the public justice system was not working in terms of protecting children from what we call commercial sexual exploitation or sex trafficking. And so over the past 10 years, we have seen huge changes because of us being able to strengthen the public justice system. So for example, when we started, there were estimates on the ground by research that about 15% of children under the age of 15 were, or I should put it this way, that in establishments that sex was for sale, about 15% of those within those establishments were children under the age of 15. Mm-hmm. And so we've recently had external researchers do another study, and they have found that there's a 95% decrease in the availability of young children, so those under 15, to less than 1%. And we really contribute a major part of that change to the changes that we've seen in the public justice system. So in Cambodia, we've been able to do things like train the anti-human trafficking police. We work with the prosecutors and the judges in those systems. We have investigators who work with the police to actually find these situations. We have social workers, which was the team that I was involved with, because it's not just enough to rescue children from sex trafficking, you also have to walk them through a process of healing. And so we have great partners.
In some of these developing parts of the world, sometimes systemically the legal and justice systems aren't as secure as they may be in places like Canada. Sometimes there's lots more corruption. Sometimes it's even more dangerous. You don't get the support you may feel you get going to these types of streams. Is it just as easy as, well, you know what, we need better law enforcement in these developing countries where that may be one of the sources of danger and problems itself? How would you respond to that? Maybe I'll start with Ed and go from there.
Well, it's certainly true. I mean, corruption is a problem in many of the societies and communities where we work, but it is not inevitable. It is, we are convinced, and we have proven to be true, that in every community there are good men and women who are committed to the protection of the people of their communities and are prepared to work with us, sometimes at the risk of their own reputations. But I think the other thing that we need to do, and this is part of the methodology of IJM as well, is to work to build a social demand for change. I think very often there is a sense of inevitability regarding some of these crimes, that that's just the way that it is. And the poor feel that they are not able to raise their voice, make their concerns heard to the extent that the authorities in their countries will begin to respond to those problems. So we work through agencies like the church and other community organizations to build a social demand for change, to encourage the people of the communities to raise their voice and say, these kinds of practices are not acceptable. They're not how we want to live.
Ed Wilson, Executive Director of International Justice Mission Canada, and Kelly Cameron, Student Mobilization Coordinator with IJM. Thank you both for joining us very much here at Context.